November 29th, 1970. A family is hiking through the mountain forest just outside Bergen, Norway. Cold air, bare trees, the kind of quiet that makes you feel very small. And then the smell hit them. Something burning somewhere through the trees. They followed it, pushing through the branches into a rocky clearing, and they found her. A woman, lying on her back, arms stretched out to her sides, her body still smoldering. She was fully dressed, overcoat, boots, clothes intact. Around her, 2 empty bottles of liqueur, remnants of chocolate, a small spoon, a sleeping mat, like she had packed for a quiet night outdoors. But she hadn't been sleeping. She had been burned, deliberately, methodically, and whoever did it had made very sure that nobody would ever be able to say her name. This is the story of the Isdal Woman, a case so layered with deception, so cold in its precision, that 50 years later, Norwegian authorities still haven't given her a name. When police arrived at Fjellen Mountain, the scene had the shape of a suicide. Sleeping pills, alcohol, a remote location far from the city, someone who had chosen to disappear. But the body told a very different story. The woman had been severely burned, not from falling into a fire, but from flames set directly on and around her body, deliberately, with intent. The autopsy confirmed she had ingested phenobarbital, a powerful sedative, at approximately 60 times a therapeutic dose, enough to kill her, possibly enough to have already killed her before the fire was lit. But possibly not. There were signs of external trauma, bruising, marks on the body consistent with a struggle or with restraint. The official ruling was probable suicide. Most investigators who have worked this case never believed it. And then came the detail that changed everything. Every identifying feature had been removed. Every label cut from every piece of clothing, every single one. Tags stripped from her boots, her coat, her underwear. Someone had gone through every item she owned with a pair of scissors and removed any trace of where anything had come from. Her fingerprints had been partially destroyed by the fire. Her teeth bore no match in any known database. Whoever she was, or whoever had prepared this scene, had worked very carefully to make sure she could never be identified.
But investigators had one thing they hadn't counted on: her suitcases. Police traced her movements back to Bergen's central train station. In the left luggage lockers, 2 suitcases. Inside, women's clothing, toiletries, a wig, a pair of dark glasses, more items with labels cut out, but also, crucially, an unburned passport photograph. Dark hair, pale skin, striking features, Eastern European in appearance, a woman somewhere between 25 and 40 years old. They circulated the photo. Hotels across Bergen were canvassed one by one, and they found her trail. She had been staying in at least 8 different hotels across Norway over the previous weeks, using a different name at each one. Fenella Lorch, Claudia Tilt, Elizabeth Lienhauf. At least 9 confirmed aliases, possibly more. Hotel staff described her as quiet, reserved, nervous. One receptionist said she always paid in cash and avoided eye contact at check-in. Another noticed she had rearranged her room. Every piece of furniture moved to face the door. A Bergen taxi driver came forward. He had driven her to Fjellen Mountain, the exact area where her body was found, days before her death. She had asked to stop, got out, studied the terrain carefully, then asked to be taken back into the city, like she was scouting the location. Her travel itinerary, pieced together from hotel records and railway tickets, showed she had moved through Norway, Switzerland, Belgium, the UK, and Germany in just a few months, always alone, always a different name, always cash. This wasn't a woman on holiday. This was someone who had been very precisely trained in how not to be found.
Which made one discovery inside those suitcases almost impossible to explain. Tucked inside one suitcase was a piece of paper. On it, a handwritten sequence of letters and numbers. It looked like a code. Cryptographers eventually cracked it, a simple substitution cipher. When decoded, a list of dates and place names, a travel record of some kind, but incomplete, and some entries didn't match her confirmed movements at all. Then, also in the suitcase, 7 small glass bottles with no labels. Lab analysis identified various compounds inside them. One was a confirmed poison, not available over the counter in Norway in 1970. So let's take stock of what we actually have here. A woman traveling alone across 6 countries under 9 different false identities, carrying a hand-coded travel log and a set of unmarked chemical bottles, one of which is a poison. The word nobody wanted to say out loud, but that everyone in that investigation room was thinking, was spy. Norway's intelligence opened a parallel investigation almost immediately. Norway in 1970 was a NATO country with a direct border to the Soviet Union. Bergen, a major port city, was one of the most strategically sensitive locations in all of Scandinavia. If someone was running a covert operation in Norway in 1970, Bergen is exactly where you'd send them. So here's the thing. We have a name for her. We have 9 names for her. We just don't know which one, if any, is real. Let me show you what investigators found when they tried to trace her backwards. Her glasses were traced to a small optician in Brussels. Police flew to Belgium. The optician confirmed he had made them. The customer had paid in cash, given no name, and never returned. Another dead end. Another door closed. A Belgian researcher cross-referencing old Interpol files found a record. An unidentified woman matching her description stopped at a European border crossing in 1969. That record had been flagged by West German intelligence. Why was West German intelligence tracking her? That file is sealed. It has never been released. Another door closed. Hotels across 6 countries, railway records, border crossings. Every thread investigators pulled, cut, always cut, clean and deliberate, like someone had moved through her life before them and removed everything that mattered. She had been very well trained, or someone very powerful had cleaned up after her. And there is one detail never made public in 1970 that makes the intelligence theory almost impossible to dismiss. In a Bergen hotel room she had used under one of her aliases, a room she had checked out of just 3 days before her body was found, every piece of furniture had been rearranged to face the door. That's not paranoia. That's tradecraft. And then, decades later, science gave investigators something the 1970 team never had. In 2017, the BBC and Norwegian broadcaster NRK launched a joint investigation into the case. Forensic scientists extracted mitochondrial DNA from her teeth. The result pointed to Central European ancestry, Germany, Poland, or the Czech and Slovak regions. No match in any existing database. She still wasn't in the system. Then came isotope analysis, and this one is worth understanding for a moment. Your tooth enamel forms during childhood and never changes after that. It records the water and food you consumed growing up, and that varies depending on where in the world you were raised. It's essentially a geological record of your childhood locked inside your teeth. Her results pointed to one specific region, Alsace-Lorraine in northeastern France, or the adjacent German border area, right on the edge of what was, in the post-war years, one of the most fractured and politically complicated corners of Europe. Forensic artists produced a detailed facial reconstruction using her skull and the passport photograph. It was circulated globally. Dozens of people came forward, each one claiming to recognize her. Not one of the identifications held up under scrutiny. But the coded note, the one found in her suitcase in 1970, produced something the original investigators could never have anticipated. Re-examined by forensic linguists, the handwriting in the coded note revealed something specific. The way certain letters had been formed, the angle of the strokes, the shape of the loops, was consistent with someone educated in East Germany or Czechoslovakia. East Germany, Stasi territory. Researchers went into the Stasi records that had been declassified after German reunification. They found references to female operatives running covert operations across Western Europe in the late 1960s. Vague file descriptions, every name an alias. Nothing matched her definitively. But one document stopped them cold. A Stasi file from 1969 referenced a female operative who had gone dark, meaning she had stopped reporting in somewhere in Scandinavia. No follow-up entry in the file, no recovery mission recorded, no death notice, no acknowledgement of any kind. She was simply gone, and nobody, it seems, had come looking.
In 2019, Norwegian police officially reopened the case, and what they discovered about the original investigation is almost as disturbing as the death itself. In 2019, Norwegian authorities formally reopened the Isdal Woman investigation. New DNA samples were submitted to European and American genealogy databases. The goal was simple: find a living relative, a partial match that could lead, finally, to a name. That search is still ongoing. But the reopening also forced a reckoning with the original investigation itself. Declassified documents revealed that Norwegian intelligence, the PST, had been aware of the case almost from the beginning. They had conducted their own parallel inquiry in 1970 and 1971. The results of that inquiry were never shared with the police. The files were classified. They remained classified for over 40 years. When they were finally released, in part, they confirmed what many had long suspected. Norwegian intelligence believed the woman had connections to foreign intelligence services. They did not specify which country. They did not specify her role. They described her simply as a person of interest. The official cause of death remains probable suicide. No murder charges have ever been filed. No country has ever claimed her. She was buried in Bergen's Merlindal Cemetery in 1971. Her grave marker reads, Isdal Woman, found 29.11.1970. No name, no birth date, no country of origin, just the date she was found. In 2022, forensic teams ran her DNA through a larger international database and found a partial match, a distant relative living in France. That person was contacted, They had no knowledge of any family member who had gone missing in the 1960s or 70s. The trail went quiet again. There is a theory, and it is only a theory, that fits almost everything we know. A woman born somewhere in Central Europe, possibly behind the Iron Curtain, recruited, willingly or otherwise, into intelligence work, sent to Scandinavia to gather information near NATO infrastructure in Bergen. And then something went wrong, a compromise, a betrayal, an order she couldn't survive. She was taken to that clearing on Fjellen Mountain, or she walked there herself because she already knew what was coming. And then she was erased. Not just killed, erased. Every label cut away, every thread that led back to a life severed. A loose end tied off by someone who was very good at tying off loose ends. The Cold War produced a lot of people like that. People who disappeared into the machinery of intelligence and never came back out. Most of them got unmarked graves in countries that still refused to acknowledge them. She got a grave in Bergen with a marker, which is more than most of them ever got. But she still doesn't have a name. If you recognize her, if you know anything about who she was, Norwegian police are still taking information. 54 years later, someone out there knows who the Isdal Woman was. They just haven't spoken yet.